Mandy is written and directed by Panos Cosmatos, and it stars the best actor to ever live in the history of filmmaking, Nicolas Cage.
Hey, have you ever been dragged to the sidewalk and beat until you pissed blood?
I saw the trailer for this film a few months back, and immediately after I saw it, I was hyped to see it because the visual aesthetic to it was just undeniably breathtaking, at least what I was getting from the trailer. The overall visual aesthetic that was advertised to me in the trailer just looked insanely hypnotic and really immersive. And after seeing Mandy, it was very immersive and very hypnotic. Mandy is truly an interesting and unique piece of filmmaking. And the first half of this film gave me exactly what I was hoping for out of it. The aesthetic approach to this, to the first half of this was nearly perfect. I mean, I was insanely immersed into basically everything that was happening. The entire first half of this film is basically this visually stunning, mind-blowing art house approach to horror filmmaking. And I loved every second of it. I thought it was brilliant. I just thought this film established itself in a very daunting and atmospherical way. With the score, by the way, by Johansen is just off the charts. The score in this film, if you're a fan of Refn films or really a fan of just this kind of like 80s retro kind of soundtrack and score, this film will satisfy those desires very well. And the first half is art house in the sense that, you know, it's paced relatively slow. There's a lot of shots that linger for a very long time that I think your casual audience member might get uncomfortable with. There's a lot of interesting uses of light that, you know, might seem unnatural again for somebody who isn't used to watching this kind of stuff. And, you know, again, I just thought that approach was really immersive, and I found it to be probably the highest quality of this film. And on top of that, there's actually some thought-provoking themes in this film, especially within the first half, where it really goes into religious cults and narcissism and drug abuse and just overall evil, you know, battling good and evil. There's a lot of themes in this movie, but the one I found to be more interesting that I felt they really focused more on was just a theme of like how cults, you know, how they form and what the mentality of most of their leaders are like. I just thought it conveyed a really honest and thought-provoking message about religion in the sense that it kind of exists because there's narcissists out there who don't want to take accountability for their failures, and they just kind of want to make the world revolve around them as if they're something just special when they're not. But yeah, so first half, visually stunning, a lot of awesome metaphorical imagery as well, a lot of symbolic imagery, and just overall just really fun to watch. Like, it's just really engaging, really hypnotic, really sucks you into what it's trying to do. And then the second half starts, and it's like a totally different movie. I mean, it's not that I didn't like it. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel like I was watching a completely different movie. After a certain event happens, about at the halfway point of the film, it just completely turns into this kind of revenge action horror comedy, like B-grade Evil Dead 2 type genre movie. And it did that very well. It really exceeded in that genre. The first half of this film, visually stunning art house, like movement sequence, whatever you want to call it. The second half of this film is basically the Nick Cage kicking ass extravaganza. And that was fine, you know? I mean, it's fine, but at the same time, I feel like the way it was transitioned, and the way Nick Cage goes about that revenge seemed a little plastered on and not as smooth or thought out as I hoped that it would be. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like these kind of campy horror comedies. Evil Dead 2 is a really good film. I own it. But it just seemed kind of awkward to have these two different approaches to horror kind of divided like that, one after the other. And like I said, I still really enjoyed the second half of this film. It was that transition where I felt it was a little awkward and kind of like difficult to adjust to it, to where I was watching it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like funny now. Okay, haha, funny. But once I got where it was, you know, definitely trying to go, then I just kind of rolled with it, and then I still found myself having a lot of fun with it. And plus, the ending, probably the last 15 minutes of this film, goes back to what I really loved about the first half of this film. It has a more slower pace. There's more kind of like drawn out scenes that are used to convey some sort of, at least some sort of immersive aesthetic or some sort of thematic element. That style returned back to the very last 15 minutes of the movie, and I'm glad that it at least kind of hammered that in, and it didn't just completely turn into that and forget about what it established as. So that was refreshing. It wasn't like, when I was watching this film, it kind of reminded me a bit of Tusk, where I felt like the first half was trying, and then the second half was just straight up like B-movie kind of garbage. But Mandy is definitely, I don't think is nearly that at all. The second half is, at least I can tell, was very effortful. There's still a lot to read into the second half as well, even though it's kind of just fun entertainment mode. There's actually a lot to read into the character and story, and even some of the theme in those moments. So I still find myself having lots of fun with it. Nick Cage has a ball with this movie. It was really, he has a caged out moment in this film, maybe a couple, but one in particular that I just feel like any Nick Cage fan is just going to be so satisfied and so happy to actually watch this unfold. But he has a really funny fucking caged out moment. That's all I'm going to say. But I really found myself enjoying this film a lot. I haven't really seen many films like this one. It has a very grainy and kind of retro style to it that it's kind of trying to bring back. And it's definitely kind of doing this throwback thing. And it works. It definitely works in its favor for the most part. Again, it kind of adds to that really unique aesthetic approach to it. And by the way, this film in the second half gets really gruesome and bloody. So again, like the movie that I can really compare it the most to that just comes to mind is The Evil Dead 2. It gets to that kind of level of silliness mixed with badassery, mixed with just straight up gore and blood everywhere. And it's, anybody who really is into that kind of horror comedy action stuff, it definitely gives you what you want there. And then for anybody who just loves like art house film directing, just really aesthetic films, this film also really gives you that. So yeah, it's a really unique film. That's what I can really say the most. It's a really unique film, and it's crafted in a really interesting way, and it's very aesthetic. So I'm going to give Mandy a 7.8 out of 10. And by the way, this honestly isn't a film that I would recommend to a casual moviegoer. Even though it kind of has that fun, kind of mindless action stuff in it, I still don't think your casual moviegoer would be really satisfied coming out of it. But I do think that film lovers and horror movie lovers in general will really get a lot out of this and will be mostly satisfied walking out of it. By the way, this film only had one showing on one day, and of course that entire theater was packed and it was sold out. And they all loved it. I think they loved it, honestly, probably more than I did, because they clapped throughout it and they clapped a lot at the end. And they really enjoyed it a lot, it seems. So, at least for my anecdotal evidence, my theater liked it. But anyway, thank you so much for hearing what I had to say about Mandy. If you really like what I had to say, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Misfit Pawn channel to be updated on more film-related content.